Hello and welcome back to the Publisher Podcast from Media Voices. I'm Esther Thorpe, and in this podcast, Chris Sutcliffe, Peter Houston and I are exploring the people and products powering publishing, both through the podcast and our adjacent weekly newsletter, which you can sign up for at voices.media. Just a quick note that the Publisher Podcast Awards are open for entries until the 14th of March. If you're a publisher with a brilliant podcast or a stable of them, go to publisherpodcasts.com for categories and more. We're really pleased to have Memberful as sponsors for this season of the Publisher Podcast. Memberful is a powerful membership solution with a difference. You always retain full control over your brand, content, audience and business. Take control of your publishing business this new year with Memberful. Visit memberful.com/publisherpod. That's memberful.com/publisherpod to get started with a free trial. This week we're joined by Hannah Ballantyne, Senior Social Media Manager at Which. She contributed to a fascinating article in Publishing last year about steering the brand's debut on TikTok. And with the ongoing saga between platforms, publishers and politicians, we had a timely conversation about which platforms they prioritise at Which, how they assess the value of social media to the publication, and why younger people are desperate for dishwasher content. Now, Hannah has worked for some really interesting companies in the past, including Disney, AOL and Nationwide. So I started by asking her how she got into the social media side of things and what lessons she's learned from working at places that aren't publications that she's brought to her role at Which.
Many of my previous roles have been in content across a broad range of companies, like you say, so the likes of AOL, Disney, Carlton, which became ITV, and they were very much sort of content focused. I then actually ran my own business with my husband, an organic shop, for a period before moving back into content, and that's where I kind of made the move into social media. So I went to work for Whitard, specifically as their social media manager, looking after all of their output across sort of various channels. And from there, I went to Nationwide, and from there, I came to Which. And I think as my career's progressed, it's become increasingly important to me to work for an organisation that's purpose-led. And this is something that Which absolutely is. It's a really unique organisation in that, you know, we're the UK's consumer champion and we're here to make life simpler, fairer and safer for everyone. And it's a really interesting, unique business. I've never worked anywhere where there's been access to so much content, and we use our commercial business to fund our charitable endeavours, so our campaigning for consumers. So, you know, we've obviously got magazine subscriptions, we have affiliate revenue, we also license endorsements to business, and then we've got a range of different sort of paid for services and things like Which Trusted Traders and Which Wills, Which Legal Services. So they all fund our ability to sort of campaign on behalf of consumers, whether that's protecting access to cash, campaigning for safer products, or, you know, one of the campaigns we've got at the moment is around insurance, campaigning to get the FCA to take more action on insurance companies who are, you know, effectively ripping off their customers. And I think in terms of things I've kind of learned as I've gone along, you know, there are some sort of fairly common underlying principles, kind of three key learnings. So focus on quality. So whether you're talking about loose leaf tea or, you know, student accounts or dehumidifiers or campaigns for consumers, the same core principles apply. So clarity, relevance and the value to your audience. I think nowadays more than ever, you've only got seconds to hook people. So that really kind of strong hook and a very clear call to action and just getting your message across as soon as you possibly can and driving that action, whether it's, you know, you want to drive people through to an article, you want them to watch a video, you want them to sign a petition, you know, whatever that action is, you've got to have a really clear hook to get them there. And then finally, I think the thing is nowadays with the proliferation of sort of social channels, you're not just competing with your competitors, you're competing with everything else in people's feeds, from dog videos, celebrity gossip, you know, the latest breaking news, amazing photography. And now, you know, we've got AI in the mix as well. So there's just this plethora of stuff that you're up against. So it's challenging for brands to be able to kind of cut through. But it's an exciting challenge. And I think working somewhere like Which, where we have, like I said, so much amazing content, so many experts, it's more relevant than ever, because in a world full of misinformation and fake news and everyone's an expert, we actually are a trusted voice and a source of genuinely expert advice, rigorous testing and research findings.
It's interesting you said about quality, because I know one of the conversations publishers had probably 4 or 5 years ago was there's all these creators that are just doing pieces sort of in selfie mode. Yeah, it's quite informal, it's quite casual, there's no production there. And publishers were very much going for this sort of much higher production output. Do you think that publishers still need to have that quality in the production to make them stand out? Or is it much more about the content they're putting out being accurate, like what they're actually saying being accurate?
I think it's a mix, and I think it depends what the topic is and what the content of the video is. I know that on the likes of TikTok and Instagram, there are instances where we take a more lo-fi approach subject to the kinds of things we're talking about, whereas in other content, where perhaps we're showing some of our testing and we're showing those kind of lab settings, that there are more high production values needed to get across that content. So I think it really does sort of vary, but something that applies across the board is you've got to get straight into it. There's no room for introductions or scene setting, context and all that. Get straight into it, because those first couple of seconds are critical.
That feels quite scary in itself. No context, straight in. And in the time you've been working on social media, it's changed dramatically. I mean, even the last 18 months, social media it's changing all the time.
Yeah.
I'm curious about some of the things maybe that have stood out to you about the way brands engage on social that's maybe changed in that time. Like, are there things that have been consistent, or is it a case that they have to just be responsive to the trends and responsive to what's going on?
I think the things I've noticed, obviously, like I said, there's this proliferation of social platforms. People's behaviours change, so the rise in terms of dark social and people using WhatsApp and Facebook groups, private Facebook groups, more platforms are working harder to keep people on platform. So, and therefore prioritising and deprioritising posts accordingly. And that's led to brands having to work harder to get engagement and reach. And then obviously, like you mentioned, there's the rise of influencers, content creators, and, more of a switch to sort of video content. So all of these things mean brands have to work harder to cut through. But it still does come down to, I think, value, quality and relevance, and being in the right place with the right content for that audience is key. I've certainly worked at places where sometimes sort of social media is seen as, well, it's quick and easy to do. Let's just put it out, and see if it works.
Give it to the intern.
Yeah. And, I'm a big fan of just because you can doesn't mean you should. Putting out things just because you can have a detrimental effect. So I think it's about sort of staying true to what you're trying to achieve and really focusing on, as I said, that quality output. I also, lots of brands kind of jump on trends and bandwagons. And I think there are instances where it can work brilliantly. Like, so the recent, if Gen Z wrote the marketing script, I think Currys did a brilliant execution of this. They hit it at the right point. I think it was incredibly well written, and it was just an excellent way to showcase their products, their stores, their branding, but in an entertaining and kind of funny way. So I think if you do it right, it can be incredibly effective. But I think you need to think carefully as a brand. Is it going to jar with your audience? Are you going to be able to execute it in an authentic way? Or is it just going to look like you're jumping on a bandwagon? And that isn't something I've ever been a sort of fan of. So, yeah, I think if it's authentic and it's natural, totally jump on a trend if you can take part in a way that kind of reinforces who you are and doesn't jar. The other thing I, really have never been a big fan of is a kind of clickbait approach. So for me, what you promise is what you should deliver. So that's a lens we apply a lot to our content. And we've got a fantastic video and audio production team. We work really closely with them. We work closely with stakeholders across the business. So all of our content editors and content producers and researchers, our video team, designers, and also our campaigns team and advocacy. So, that's one of the things that's really exciting, I think, from a social media point of view. We get to work with so many different people across the business, and you're at the heart of the business. And we're really fortunate at Which, because social media is very much viewed by our leadership team as core to who we are, but also what we want to become. So it's seen as strategically important. I've got an amazing team, absolutely brilliant, and they're responsible for all of our output across our channels as well as inbound engagement, and they are constantly looking for new opportunities to exploit. So for example, recently we do a lot of work around things like Black Friday and Amazon Prime days, where we're highlighting deals that our experts have uncovered. So it's not just from a price point of view. We would only recommend products that have also done well in our tests, rather than just this is a bargain. That's not the approach we take, because we're very much about helping people get it right, when it comes to kind of making those purchasing decisions. And my team proposed that we create an Instagram broadcast channel specifically to highlight those best deals for those people who are in the market for identifying some good deals. It was a way then to have a dedicated place where we could be sending links to the various deals pages, whether they're retailer deals pages or product category deals pages. We've also fairly recently introduced the use of ManyChat on our Instagram, because obviously Instagram is quite limited in terms of driving traffic, and that's one of our big aims. We want to sort of send people back to the Which website, whether it's helpful consumer rights template or whether we want to point them to a guide with more information. Maybe it's some product safety content, that sort of thing. So ManyChat's really helped us with that, because we can then say to people, if you want to learn more, comment energy, for example, and here, we're going to point you to our best and worst energy providers. So my team is brilliant.
The team, do they all work across all the different platforms you're on, or are they specific? And which platforms are you on?
So we're pretty much across all the main platforms. So, obviously Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, LinkedIn. So we've got our kind of main Which accounts, and then we also have some additional specific accounts. So we've got Money, Facebook and X, and we also have Trusted Traders accounts on Facebook and X. We've also got a number of different Facebook groups. So we've got gardening, travel, scams.
I hope that's not called Which Scams.
And then we've also got a Which members group, which is specifically for our members, and that's been brilliant, because what we know from our members, they love getting the magazine or having access to it digitally, but having a group of their peers means that they can get onto the group and say, look, I've read the reviews for this vacuum cleaner, for example. Has anybody got, can you tell me about what it's like in real life? So they kind of then can complement the knowledge. So, reading the reviews and how it's done in our testing with people's actual experience. So our Facebook groups, we've got over 130,000 members across all the groups. And our social base in total is over 1 million across all of our channels. And in terms of how the team works, it's a bit of a mix, actually, in terms of, not necessarily being like dedicated to one channel. It's a very sort of collaborative environment. So every day, every morning, we have a catch up and we're looking at how things have done. We're also looking at what's coming up. Yeah, as I said, we've got this incredible range of inputs, I suppose. So, we also once a week look ahead at the whole. We've got like access to a grid, and we can kind of see all the content that's coming up. And it is quite unique. So some of the kind of key content would be current scams. So I mentioned scams before, but this is something where we can really add value for consumers. So as soon as a sort of scam is breaking, we can bring that to life in terms of, this is what you need to look out for. So whether that's a video or a graphic or an article, we can provide that information in a sort of timely way. Our scam alert email, which is free, we've nearly got 500,000 subscribers on that. And I think in terms of protecting you, your friends and family, it's so important. And particularly as scammers become so sophisticated, just knowing what to look for. And then we've got just this incredible host of like everyday advice and explainers, things that will help you get more out of your appliances. So, you know, the purchases that you've made, whether it's your dishwasher, your washing machine, your TV, your phone, things that help you save time or money. We've had a lot of traction with, we did a video and a graphic both on oven controls, oven functions. It's quite interesting because when we were looking at this, the number of people who just use the grill and the fan oven and then that's it. And you've got all these other things and they don't know what they're for.
Washing machine drawers, like you open the drawer in the washing machine and I'm like, what goes, there's three sections, what goes in each one?
We've got a video on that, Esther, so yeah, you can check that. But, you know, it's exactly these things. And dishwashers, that is our top performing sort of video content on Instagram and TikTok. So on Instagram, like over 25 million views are, you know, I'm a dishwasher expert. These are 5 things I'd never do. And I think it just on the back of that, because we're, you know, very insight driven and we've kind of, you know, we look at the comments, we look at the other questions that come up. So then we've developed a whole series of videos, how to stack your dishwasher, how to clean your dishwasher, what you shouldn't put in your dishwasher. You know, there's lots of extensions. But that expert, 5 things I'd never do as an expert, that again, we've rolled out to other things like, you know, tumble dryers, scams, you know, washing machines, all sorts of things. But I think the thing with dishwashers and the reason that's so popular is I think in pretty much any household, there's always like a dishwasher Jedi who feels that, you know, they are in tune with the dishwasher and know exactly what to do, and anything that anybody else does in that house is wrong. So, you know, they're the ones like restacking it. So it's just one of those topics that's brilliantly engaged, is a bit of a bone of contention. And, you know, what we can bring is genuine expert insight into how to get the most out of your dishwasher and the things you really should do and really shouldn't do.
I feel like I need to go and watch this because how to stack the dishwasher is obviously one of our household arguments as well.
I think that's why it's so popular. Yeah.
Did you say how many people you had on the team?
There's 6 of us on the team.
Gosh, that's a lot of output for 6 people.
Yeah, it's a brilliantly efficient team.
Yeah. Do you find when you're recording like the videos with the experts, do you put the same thing out as like an Instagram reel and on TikTok, or do the platforms need feeding individually?
So I'd say we pretty much produce our videos for both those sort of channels. We don't always put all of it on both those channels. And then we also, you know, as well as the kind of the real format and, you know, short form video, we use dynamic text videos. So these are just kind of very simple, you know, we'll have a background, bit of footage and some music, and then we'll just overlay it with text. So if it's something pretty clear and simple we want to get out quite quickly, we use those as well. So it is a real mix. So on TikTok, we launched in February 23 and we're now at almost 100,000 followers. Not that followers is the kind of key metric for TikTok, because obviously you can have incredible success, but with a very sort of small base. And we've had over 56 million views in that time. And the top performing themes, so as I said, sort of dishwashers is a big one. Saving energy, so what you can do with your boiler or your radiators, you know, which will help keep your house warmer, but not allow you to kind of save on bills as well. Some little sort of tricks and tips there. And then consumer rights. So, you know, as I was saying, how, you know, if your car is damaged by a pothole, and that was the very first video we did put out on TikTok, because at this time of year, you've come out, there's been ice, which totally exacerbates the whole pothole issue. And, you know, our roads are pretty awful.
There is nothing Brits feel more passionately about than potholes.
So, you know, it was a great piece to launch with. And yeah, that first video, we achieved over 1 million views just with our very first video, which was, you know, just brilliant. We struck gold with that kind of first video. Whereas on Instagram, it's slightly different. And we've had like phenomenal growth on Instagram. You know, in that same period, since February 2023, we've grown our base by over 300,000. And in the period kind of June 23 to August 24, our base actually grew faster than like The Guardian, the Daily Mirror, the Washington Post and Money Saving Expert. So we totally outperformed in terms of growth. And the kind of key themes on, or the popular most popular sort of videos on Instagram, again, dishwashers, and that is way out in front with 25 million views. But things like child safety plays really well on Instagram. We've been able to attract sort of younger family audience with that kind of content. So things like, those toys with tiny magnets.
Yeah.
Showing the dangers of sort of swallowing those, button batteries, and things like plug protectors, which, are obviously sold
aren't actually as safe as they
think. They're sold as safety devices.
Do you know, I think it was a witch video I saw on Instagram recently, actually, about those. I'm curious about there's this sort of stereotype, I suppose, of audiences. When people say Instagram, I sort of think, the millennials, the people that are now having kids and looking towards that sort of family content. Facebook's where my mum is and that sort of age group. And then TikTok is where the youth are and the kids are. And I'm probably too old for TikTok at this point. Is that broadly what you see in terms of what people are wanting? I'm just curious when you said the potholes was the first one, because I wondered if the age group on there were necessarily as into driving.
No, do you know, it's interesting. I think that is the perception that TikTok is, very young. And it is a place where you can attract a younger audience. But I think you'd be surprised how broad the demographic actually is on TikTok. It isn't just young people at all. So, we have broadened our demographic. So, our heartland is probably 25 to 45 across channels. But TikTok and Instagram do give us access to, those younger audiences as well. But I think you'd be surprised. It's not as stark as that, the difference. I think one of the interesting things on TikTok is that's probably where, for witch content, we see more of an even balance, sort of male and female, whereas a lot of our other channels are more female skewed. So that's interesting. But one of the other things, which is a really kind of strong area for us, is around energy and things like condensation and mold. People love that content. If you can suggest ways that they can, prevent it and avoid it, it's a real winner for us. And I think it's, one of the interesting things about working for Which is there's a lot of kind of misconceptions about who we are and what we do. So, one of the common perceptions is we only review washing machines, or we only deal with white goods. That brands can kind of influence us. They can give us backhanders or freebies to, kind of sway our views. And that is absolutely not the case. We're completely impartial and completely independent. And also that you need to be a paying member to see any of our content. And again, that's something we've got a wealth of free content. And that's something that social really helps address. We recently were observing a sort of focus group, and it was incredible how many times people mentioned things they'd seen on social, specifically Instagram, TikTok. They'd watched a video, like I said, on mold or condensation, or, we recently did something around dynamic pricing, around the Oasis ticketing. And, they'd seen this content initially, and then they'd sort of start following us, seen the kind of what other output we did. And it really opened their eyes, and they were quite sort of surprised as to, A, just the breadth of our offering, and B, how much of it is, free to access. So I think our social media presence is a brilliant gateway for people to discover Which. And I think there are some very young people who probably literally don't know who Which is. But there are a lot of people whose parents or grandparents, that's their association, or they get the magazine. So it's just a brilliant way for us to show how relevant we are. And like I said, in these days, being able to stand out as a trusted source of expert advice is incredibly important.
It's interesting you mentioned about you can't be bought by brands, because I think the perception is a lot of influencers are, influencers will sort of have an ad with a product, and it doesn't matter if they like it or not, they'll say they like it. And there is a huge lack of trust there. And then you've got all the AI stuff coming in. If you go onto Facebook, there's like Shrimp Jesus and all that sort of really weird stuff coming out. So I don't know if there is going to be this sort of big swing back to trusted brands and trusted publishers. Well, I hope there is. I hope there is. I don't know if you're maybe starting to see that or lean into that.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And I think one of the other things is, as well as, like you say, influencers making their recommendations and being sponsored, and also, which can have like incredibly influential impact on people, but also reviews. This is one thing we've campaigned on in terms of fake reviews and online platforms, just certainly spotting scams and removing them. That's certainly what, one of our kind of big wins. Like, the online safety bill was passed and became law. And, we had been campaigning for social platforms and search engines to take much more responsibility for removing these scams from their sites. But I think the same thing is true of, fake reviews. It's often not possible to determine whether something is genuine or not. And again, I think that's, like you say, where Which has a kind of key role to play, in that we are independent, we are impartial, we have rigorous test, it's lab-based testing. Our in-house experts genuinely are experts. So we don't put anything out that we can't stand behind and back up with our research and investigations.
I could talk about general social media all day. I'm conscious I do want to get onto the TikTok stuff specifically, which you've mentioned quite a bit already. When you launched back in 2023, did you have targets or a runway to prove that TikTok was worth it? Because I know people are looking at launching on it. They sort of think, well, how long are we going to give it before we maybe back off a bit?
We'd been looking at it for quite a while. The team did a lot of research into what competitors and comparable brands were doing, what we thought the opportunity was. We also obviously, if you're looking at a new social media platform, it's about being able to have a sustainable supply of relevant content. So that was something we were looking at as well. So we obviously worked really closely with our video. We've got a fantastic video team, in-house video team, which we work really closely with. So we kind of put forward a sort of business case based on, being able to reach a different audience and the opportunities TikTok presented in terms of opportunities for like incredible scale without necessarily, it's not a case that you have to build up your follower base sort of thing. And
because if one video does well, that can be millions of views.
Yeah, exactly. Like our pothole video and that was from a zero start, did a million views. Which isn't to say every video you put out is going to do. It's going to perform.
You're at the mercy of the algorithm, yeah.
TikTok is possibly the least predictable, I think, platform in terms of how things will do. So we scoped out a 3-month trial, 3 to 6 month trial, and we were looking at achieving 350 views over that first 3 months.
Oh, that's all right then.
Posting 3 to 5 videos a week. But like I said, we launched it in February 2023. We're almost at 100k followers, and it's been entirely organic growth and 56 million video views. So for us, it was, I think, the areas that we identified and the learnings we've had as we go along. We put a lot of emphasis on thinking about why did something work? Why did something not work? You can't always absolutely tell. There is that element of unpredictability.
Yeah, so it's sort of more magic than science, really, with some of these, isn't it?
And what was really gratifying, because when we won like Best Use of Social Media award at the last year's British Society of Magazine Editors Award, and judges said, impressive execution of the brand's mission to cut through the noise of TikTok tutorials and stand out as a trusted voice in consumer affairs while ensuring it remains relevant to a younger audience, which is exactly what we were setting out to do. So it was fantastic to win.
You said the thing with going on a lot of the social platforms is trying to get people back to the website, and 56 million views is great, but that doesn't pay the bills. What's the sort of business case for being on TikTok, assuming it's still difficult to monetize directly and they haven't sort of changed that?
From a social media point of view, it's about attracting that kind of, the bigger, broader audience. It's about sort of brand awareness. It's about showcasing the breadth of the Which offering, as well as our consumer impact campaigns. And, mentioned before, it's very much a gateway to Which. So if we can drive people to the website, or we can get them to, get them to engage with our content, if we can get them to follow our channels, if we can then get them to sign up for free newsletters, or go through to the website. We're kind of building that awareness and those journeys. And ultimately, I think in their, sort of positioning which, so that at that point in their life where those key life moments, so I don't know, they're starting a hot family, they're buying a house, and they're looking to make some of those kind of big key purchases, then hopefully they then take the step to becoming a subscriber.
Yeah, sort of marketing tool rather than...
Yeah.
This is a question that may take very, very quickly. At the time of recording, TikTok has unbanned itself in the US, given that Trump signed like an order about it, but it was briefly blocked over the weekend. I think Casey Newton described it as Schrodinger's app. It is neither dead nor alive. Did you have a big US audience? Does that sort of thing concern you in terms of the sort of transience of platforms and whether we could see the same ban in the UK, whether it even be upheld in the US?
I believe what's going to happen in the US, it's such a big base, there's like 170 million users of TikTok, that Trump will find a way to keep TikTok. I think there will be a deal done about ownership. It's too big. The negative impact or the opportunity for a positive impact for Trump is too big for him to not do something in this instance. So I'd be really surprised if in 75 days or whatever, I think that's what he agreed as the reprieve, a solution isn't found. And, obviously what we do when Elon Musk took ownership of X, there was quite a change. It became much more, there was more toxicity on the channel and a lot more sort of inflammatory content on there. So we're always very much monitoring these platforms, obviously with the latest Meta changes. But again, that's only in the US at the moment. We watch and we see. I think it's for each brand needs to think about what the reputational risks are, how they want to be perceived, what content they're delivering on those platforms and what the value is. And to a certain extent, because our content is very much for all consumers, for everyone, and making life simpler, fairer and safer for everyone, there is value in being on platforms. Another question is whether you commercially support a platform. That's a different question, obviously. But I think it comes down to each individual's brand values and what they're looking to do. Those decisions about, whether you stay on a platform or you come off a platform. Obviously, the Guardian's come off X, but the majority of publishers remain on there. And there is value in having those voices and that content. But things are changing all the time.
Thank you so much to Hannah for taking the time to speak to us. Now we've got a write-up of the key learnings from this interview on voices.media, or dropped in your inbox every Tuesday if you sign up to the publisher newsletter, also on voices.media. This season is sponsored by Memberful, a best-in-class membership solution where the content belongs to you, not a platform. Find out more about how it can help diversify your revenue streams and connect with your audience at memberful.com/publisherpod. We'll be back next week with another dive into the people and products powering publishing's future. Until then, keep up with all things Media Voices by following us on LinkedIn and subscribing to the publisher newsletter over on voices.media. See you next week.